It was a typical Tuesday afternoon when Jack Thompson's life took an unexpected turn. He had been running errands all morning, and now, as he drove down a quiet suburban street, he noticed something strange. A car on the side of the road, the hazard lights blinking in the soft sunlight, caught his attention. He slowed down and pulled over, glancing at the driver. A woman, likely in her late 30s, stood by her car, staring down at a flat tire. She seemed frustrated, but not in a way that would make anyone assume something was terribly wrong. Jack wasn't one to just keep driving, especially not when someone might need help. He wasn't a mechanic, but he knew enough to offer a hand. After all, it was just a flat tire. He got out of his car and approached her, giving a friendly smile. "Hey there, looks like you've got a flat. Need some help?" The woman looked up, her eyes full of gratitude, though there was a tinge of embarrassment mixed with the frustration on her face. She was clearly not used to asking for help. "Oh, I'm so sorry to bother you," she said, her voice shaky. "I'm just having one of those days. I've got no idea what to do here. My spare tire's in the trunk, but, well, I'm not sure I even have the right tools." Jack smiled again, reassured by her honesty, and nodded toward the trunk. "No problem at all. Let me take a look. I'm sure we can figure it out." What started as a simple act of kindness quickly grew into something more. Within the next few minutes, Jack had popped the trunk, retrieved the spare, and started changing the tire for her. The woman seemed relieved, even a little embarrassed, as she watched him work, though she offered to help in any way she could. "My name's Jack, by the way," he said, trying to break the ice as he tightened the bolts. "Lucy," she replied softly, offering him a faint smile. "Thank you so much. I really didn't expect to be stuck out here today. I've just been... well, things haven't been going too well for me lately." Her voice faltered, and for a moment, Jack could see the weight of something else behind her words. Jack paused his work and looked up at her. "Hey, it's no problem at all. We all have those days. Glad I could help." Lucy nodded, but there was something in her eyes now, something that Jack couldn't quite place. She seemed on edge, as though she was holding something back, something important. The way she glanced around every so often gave Jack the impression that she wasn't just worried about a flat tire, but something else, a fear that seemed to lurk just beneath the surface. But Jack didn't press. He finished the job, packed up his tools, and helped Lucy back into her car. She thanked him again, this time with a more genuine smile, one that reached her eyes. "You really saved me today," she said. "I don't know what I would have done if you hadn't stopped." "No problem, Lucy. Just pay it forward, okay? That's all I ask." Jack chuckled, feeling good about his good deed. With one last nod, Lucy got into her car and drove off, disappearing down the street. Jack stood there for a moment, watching her go, the lingering feeling of having done something good settling in. He got back in his car and drove home, never imagining how this simple act of kindness would change his life forever. The next day, the sound of his phone ringing broke the quiet of Jack's morning. He glanced at the caller ID and saw a number he didn't recognize. It was a local area code, but something about it felt off. He hesitated for just a second before answering. "Hello? Mr. Thompson?" The voice on the other end was deep, formal, and cold. "This is James Miller. I need to speak with you regarding an urgent matter. Please be at your residence in the next hour. A vehicle will be arriving shortly." Jack froze, his mind racing. He had no idea who James Miller was, and the tone of the man's voice didn't sit well with him. But the most unsettling part was the mention of a vehicle arriving shortly. What did this have to do with him? What did he possibly need to discuss with someone he didn't know? Before he could respond, the call ended abruptly, leaving Jack staring at his phone in confusion. His heart began to race. What was this about? Why did someone he had never met need to speak with him? And why so urgently? He didn't have long to wonder. Not more than 20 minutes after the call, Jack heard the rumble of an engine pulling into his driveway. He looked out the window and saw a black SUV with tinted windows parked at the curb. His stomach tightened. It was a sleek, imposing vehicle, one that looked far more official than anything he'd ever seen in his neighborhood. His pulse quickened, and an uneasy feeling settled deep in his chest. A man stepped out of the SUV. He was tall, dressed in a dark suit that matched the vehicle's ominous tone. His face was unreadable, his posture stiff, as though he was used to delivering commands. Without a word, he walked up to Jack's door and rang the bell. Jack opened the door cautiously, still trying to process everything. The man didn't introduce himself, but there was something about his demeanor that made Jack's instincts flare. He wasn't just some stranger, this man was here with a purpose. "Mr. Thompson, I presume?" the man asked in a low, almost rehearsed voice. Jack nodded, trying to remain calm. "Yes, that's me. Is there a problem?" The man didn't answer directly. Instead, he simply handed Jack a small envelope with a single word written on the front, "Lucy." The man's eyes seemed to narrow slightly, but there was no sign of emotion as he waited for Jack to take the envelope. Jack hesitated for a moment, before reaching for it. As soon as his fingers touched the paper, the man turned sharply and began walking back to the SUV, as if his job was done. Jack stood there, the envelope heavy in his hands, his mind racing with questions. He had no idea what was going on, but there was one thing he was certain of: it had everything to do with Lucy. The black SUV rolled away from his driveway, disappearing down the street, leaving Jack alone with the mysterious envelope. He stared at it, wondering what was inside, who James Miller was, and why this was happening to him. As the minutes ticked by, Jack's thoughts were clouded with confusion, fear, and curiosity. What had he gotten himself into by helping Lucy? And more importantly, what was coming next? With a shaky hand, he opened the envelope, the contents inside waiting to reveal the answers he so desperately sought, but what he found would lead him down a path he never could have predicted. The story was only just beginning. Jack sat down at his kitchen table, the envelope still in his hand. His mind raced, trying to make sense of the situation. The moment the black SUV had rolled away, he had been left with more questions than answers. He glanced at the envelope again, his fingers lightly grazing the edges as if he were afraid to open it. The word "Lucy" written in bold letters seemed to burn in his mind, each letter carrying an ominous weight. Who was James Miller? And why did they want him? With a deep breath, Jack tore open the envelope. Inside, there was a single piece of paper, folded neatly in half. His hands shook slightly as he unfolded it. The message was short, but it hit him like a ton of bricks. Lucy is in danger. You need to help her, but trust no one. They're watching. Jack stared at the words for a long time, trying to process what he had just read. Danger? Watching? The message was cryptic, unsettling, and left him with more questions than answers. Who were they, and why would anyone be watching him? His gaze drifted back to the SUV, now just a distant memory down the street. The quiet suburban neighborhood he had known for years suddenly felt much less safe, more like a trap. Jack tried to focus. Lucy had seemed like a normal woman, a stranger who had simply needed help changing a tire. So why did this feel so wrong? He couldn't shake the feeling that he had unknowingly become entangled in something much bigger than a flat tire. A sense of dread started to gnaw at him. What if his kindness had led him into something dangerous? The sound of his phone ringing broke his thoughts. Jack jumped, instinctively reaching for the device. The caller ID showed an unknown number, the same as before. Hesitantly, he answered, his heart pounding. "Mr. Thompson?" The voice on the other end was calm, almost too calm. "You've received our message, I assume?" Jack's stomach turned. "Who is this?" "You don't need to know my name," the voice replied, without hesitation. "What you need to understand is that Lucy is no ordinary woman. You've crossed paths with someone important, and now, whether you want to or not, you're involved. Don't try to contact her. Don't go looking for answers. Just stay where you are and wait." Jack was speechless, his mind racing as the words sank in. What did he mean by someone important? Who was Lucy really, and why was he suddenly being dragged into this? "You'll understand soon enough," the voice continued, almost too soothing. "Just know that there's more at play here than you could ever imagine. Keep your distance, and we'll all get through this in one piece." Before Jack could say another word, the call ended abruptly, leaving him holding his phone in disbelief. His hands felt cold, and a wave of confusion and fear swept over him. He was no closer to understanding what was going on, but now he felt like he was part of something much darker than he could have ever expected. Jack stood up from the table, pacing around his kitchen, trying to think. He had to make sense of all this, but every thought led to more confusion. What did they mean by, "Don't go looking for answers"? How could he not try to help Lucy when she was clearly in danger? And who were these people who seemed to be pulling the strings from the shadows? The idea of just sitting back and waiting made his skin crawl, but what other choice did he have? What was he supposed to do with this vague warning? Jack's mind was racing as he thought about the woman he had helped the day before. Lucy's face came to his mind again, her nervous smile, the hint of fear in her eyes. What was she mixed up in? And how could he have been so naive, thinking it was just a flat tire and a friendly favor? Jack grabbed his coat, determined to do something. The words on the paper echoed in his mind, "Trust no one." But that didn't make sense. Who was he supposed to trust? The man in the suit, James Miller, or the faceless voice on the phone? Every instinct told him he should be cautious, but he couldn't shake the feeling that Lucy needed him. He decided to take a walk to clear his head. As he stepped outside into the cool air, he felt the weight of the situation settle over him. The neighborhood was quiet, almost eerily so. No one seemed to be around. The streets were empty, the houses lined up in neat rows, their windows dark. It was the kind of place where nothing ever seemed out of the ordinary. But today, everything felt different. The hairs on the back of his neck stood on end. Jack found himself walking down the same street where he had first met Lucy. The tire tracks from her car were still visible on the asphalt, a silent reminder of how everything had changed. His heart raced as he walked, scanning his surroundings, half expecting someone, or something, to appear out of nowhere. He passed the spot where Lucy's car had been parked, and his eyes instinctively flicked to the empty sidewalk. But there was something else. A car parked just a few houses down caught his attention. It was another black SUV, parked in front of a house with tinted windows. It looked almost identical to the one he had seen the day before. His chest tightened, his heart hammering in his chest. Was it the same one? Was this the same group, watching him? Suddenly, he froze. A figure stepped out of the SUV, the same tall man in the dark suit. The one who had come to his house earlier. Jack's blood ran cold. He was here, in his neighborhood, watching. Was he following him? Or was this all a coincidence? Jack quickly ducked behind a bush, hoping to stay out of sight. His breath caught in his throat as the man walked down the sidewalk, his footsteps steady and deliberate. He didn't look in Jack's direction, but Jack couldn't shake the feeling that the man knew exactly where he was. Panic gripped Jack as he watched, trying to make sense of everything. What was going on? Why was he being followed? And why did it all tie back to Lucy? The man in the suit stopped at the door of the house, and Jack watched as he rang the doorbell. There was a brief exchange, too quiet for Jack to hear, but the door opened, and the man disappeared inside. Jack stayed hidden behind the bush for a few more moments, but his mind was racing too fast. What if he was walking into something bigger than he could handle? What if Lucy was in even more danger than he thought? With a final glance at the house, Jack made up his mind. He needed answers, and he was no longer going to wait around for someone to tell him what was going on. It was time to confront the mystery head-on, even if it meant stepping into a world he knew nothing about. He turned and hurried back to his house, the unanswered questions weighing heavily on him. Jack's heart raced as he entered his house, trying to shake off the feeling that he was being watched. The neighborhood, once so familiar and comforting, now seemed like a maze full of hidden eyes. Every creak of the floorboards and every rustle of the wind outside felt amplified, as if the world was closing in around him. His thoughts were a tangled mess. What had Lucy gotten herself into? Who were these people, and why was he involved? And why had they come for him, a simple guy trying to help? He walked to the kitchen, his mind spinning, but then something caught his eye, an envelope. It was sitting on the kitchen counter, not there a moment ago. He was sure of it. His pulse quickened again as he reached for it. It was the same type of envelope as the one he had received earlier, only this time there was no name written on the outside. The sudden appearance of the envelope made his stomach drop. Could it be another warning? Or worse, a threat? He tore it open, his hands trembling, and pulled out a folded piece of paper. The message inside was brief, but it hit him hard. You're in deeper than you think. They're closing in. Stay where you are. Trust no one. Jack's mind went into overdrive. The message was clear. Someone wanted him to stay put, to remain passive, but everything inside him screamed that he couldn't. He couldn't just sit back and wait for things to unravel. If Lucy was in danger, he had to do something about it. But who could he trust now? The man in the suit? The voice on the phone? The words, "Trust no one," echoed in his mind. The unsettling feeling that had been building inside him for the past 24 hours intensified. Every part of him screamed that he needed to protect himself, but another part couldn't help but think about Lucy. She had trusted him with her problem, and now it seemed that her problem was bigger than anyone could have imagined. She was involved in something dangerous, something serious. But what was it? What had she done to attract this kind of attention? Just as he stood there, holding the note, his phone rang again. The same unknown number. He hesitated, the hairs on the back of his neck standing up, but finally, he picked up. Mr. Thompson, the voice on the other end was cold and stern. "We've been monitoring you." Jack's blood ran cold, and for a moment, he couldn't speak. "What do you want from me?" "We want you to stop poking around. You're already in too deep, and your involvement with Lucy has put you at risk." The voice paused, and there was a chilling edge to the words that followed. "You need to understand, there's much more at play here than you realize. Lucy is a part of something far bigger than you. And now, so are you." Jack's heart thudded in his chest. "What do you mean? What is she involved in?" "You don't need to know. Just stay out of it." The voice lowered, almost a whisper now. "You've been warned." The call ended before Jack could respond. The weight of the conversation hung in the air, and a new layer of fear settled in his stomach. What did they mean by, a part of something bigger? And how could he have possibly gotten involved in it just by helping a woman change a tire? The questions kept swirling in his head. He needed to find out more, but the more he thought about it, the more he realized how much danger he was in. He had no idea who these people were, but they clearly had the power to make him feel like a pawn in some twisted game. Suddenly, the doorbell rang, pulling him from his spiraling thoughts. Jack froze. Who could that be? He wasn't expecting anyone. He slowly approached the door, his heart racing. Through the peephole, he saw a figure standing on his front porch, but it wasn't anyone he recognized. A tall man, wearing a dark coat and sunglasses. His presence was unsettling, but what really threw Jack off was the black SUV parked in front of his house. The same kind of SUV he had seen earlier. Jack's instincts kicked in. Without thinking, he stepped back from the door, his hand instinctively reaching for the phone. He had to get out of there, but where would he go? He didn't know who was watching him or what they were capable of. He couldn't trust anyone, and he didn't even know if he was safe in his own home anymore. But it was too late. The man on the porch knocked again, louder this time, the sound echoing through the quiet house. Jack glanced around, trying to think of his next move. There was no back door, and with the SUV parked outside, he knew he couldn't escape unnoticed. With a deep breath, he made a decision. He wasn't going to hide. He was going to face this head-on. He'd come too far to back down now. Jack walked toward the door and opened it, meeting the man's cold gaze. The stranger didn't say a word but stepped inside, pushing past Jack before he could say anything. "Who are you?" Jack demanded, trying to steady his voice. The man ignored him, walking past him toward the living room. Jack closed the door, unsure of what to do. "What do you want from me?" he asked again, his voice shaky with a mix of fear and anger. The man finally turned to face him. "I'm here because you've made a mistake, Mr. Thompson. You've gotten involved with things you don't understand." "Who are you?" Jack repeated, his frustration building. "I'm just a messenger," the man replied, his tone flat. "But your involvement with Lucy has put you in more danger than you realize. You need to let this go. Walk away before it's too late." Jack felt a chill spread through him. Why? Why is she in danger? What is she involved in? The man's lips twitched as if he was considering whether to tell Jack the truth. After a long pause, he spoke. "Lucy isn't who you think she is. And neither are you." Jack felt a chill run down his spine. "What does that mean?" The man took a step closer, his presence intimidating. "Everything you've done so far has led you to this moment. Whether you like it or not, you're already in it. You can't walk away now." Before Jack could respond, the man turned and walked toward the door. "We'll be watching you," he said coldly, before leaving Jack standing there, his mind racing. The door slammed shut behind him, and Jack was left in stunned silence, the weight of the conversation pressing down on him. What did the man mean? What had he really gotten into? As the minutes ticked by, Jack realized one thing: he couldn't just walk away. Whatever was going on, Lucy was part of it, and somehow, so was he. And there was no turning back. Jack stood in the doorway, the man's ominous words still echoing in his mind. "You can't walk away now." His pulse raced, and a cold sweat broke out on the back of his neck. The sense of dread that had been creeping up on him over the past few hours was now impossible to ignore. What had he gotten himself into? How had a simple act of kindness, helping a woman change a flat tire, spiraled into something so dangerous? He paced back and forth in his living room, trying to make sense of it all. The black SUV, the mysterious man at his door, the cryptic messages. Nothing added up, but there was one thing Jack knew for sure: he couldn't ignore this any longer. The more he thought about Lucy, the more certain he became that her life was in grave danger. Whatever she was involved in, it was bigger than him, bigger than anything he could have imagined. And now he was in the thick of it too. The walls of his house, which had once felt like a sanctuary, now felt suffocating. He couldn't just sit around and wait. He had to act. But where would he even start? Who could he trust? The man had warned him not to get involved, but that warning only fueled his resolve. Jack couldn't sit back while someone, possibly Lucy, was out there in peril. But how could he find her? How could he help her if everything seemed to be moving in the shadows, out of reach? His mind kept going back to the SUV. Why had it shown up at his house? Why had the man in the suit said that he was already in danger? Was this all part of some larger conspiracy? He thought about the envelope, the second message that had appeared on his doorstep. It had been the final straw, the last push that made him realize he couldn't ignore this. He grabbed his jacket and stormed out of the house, determined to get to the bottom of it all. The evening air was cold against his skin, and the sky overhead was heavy with clouds. Jack walked quickly, almost running down the street, toward the place where he had first helped Lucy. The neighborhood felt eerily quiet, the streets almost deserted, as if the world was holding its breath. When he reached the spot where Lucy's car had been, his eyes scanned the area. He half expected to see something, anything, that would give him a clue as to what was really going on. But there was nothing. No signs, no clues. It was as if the world had swallowed the answers whole. But then, just as he was about to turn back, he noticed something strange. A light flickered on in one of the houses down the street. The window was slightly open, and for a brief moment, Jack could see a shadow move inside. His heart skipped a beat. It wasn't much, but it was enough to make him take notice. Someone was inside that house. Someone who might know something. With his mind racing, Jack made his way toward the house, trying to keep his steps light. He had no plan, he didn't know what he was doing, but something in his gut told him that this was the only lead he had. As he got closer, he could see the silhouette of a figure through the curtain. A tall man, pacing back and forth. The same man from the black SUV. Jack's stomach dropped. What was he doing there? Why had the man followed him here? His instincts kicked in, and he moved quickly, ducking behind a bush to stay out of sight. He had to know what was going on, but he had to be careful. If the man saw him, everything would fall apart. Jack's breath quickened as he carefully inched closer to the house, trying to stay hidden. Through the crack in the curtain, he could see the man talking to someone on the phone, his gestures sharp, his voice low. Jack strained to hear, but the words were muffled by the closed window. He took a few more steps, closer now, his heart pounding in his chest. Then, as if sensing Jack's presence, the man turned suddenly, his eyes scanning the street. Jack froze, praying he hadn't been seen. The man's gaze lingered for a moment before he turned back to the window, seemingly satisfied that there was no one out there. Jack exhaled slowly, his breath shaky. He had to get closer. This could be his only chance to find out more. Slowly, Jack crept up to the side of the house, trying to stay as quiet as possible. He reached the back door, which was slightly ajar. Without thinking, he pushed it open, just a crack, to listen. The voices inside were clearer now, but Jack couldn't make out the conversation. All he could hear were snippets of harsh, angry words. It was a struggle for him to piece it together, but one thing was clear: the man in the suit wasn't alone. Then, the sound of a door slamming shut made Jack jump, and he quickly backed away, retreating to the edge of the yard. His heart was pounding in his chest, the adrenaline coursing through his veins. He couldn't afford to be caught. He needed to make sense of this. But just as he was about to turn around and leave, something caught his eye. A car was pulling up at the end of the street, its headlights cutting through the dark. It was another black SUV. The same model, the same sleek design. Jack's blood ran cold as the vehicle came to a stop right in front of the house. He could see the driver through the windshield, but it wasn't the man from earlier. This was someone else. Another person, dressed in black, with a face that was hidden behind dark sunglasses. The passenger side door opened, and the figure stepped out. Jack's breath hitched. It was Lucy. Her face was pale, and she looked exhausted, as if she had been up all night. But it was the look in her eyes that sent a chill through Jack's body. Something was terribly wrong. She didn't seem surprised to see the black SUV. In fact, she seemed almost resigned. As if this was part of a routine she couldn't escape from. Lucy walked toward the house, but before she could reach the door, she turned and looked directly at Jack. Their eyes met for a brief moment, and in that fleeting instant, Jack saw something in her expression, something that told him she knew he had been following her. A silent acknowledgement. But also, a warning. Something was about to happen, and it wasn't good. Without another word, Lucy turned and disappeared into the house, leaving Jack standing there, frozen in place, his heart pounding in his chest. What was going on? What had she gotten herself into? Before he could process everything, the front door slammed shut behind her. Jack was left in the darkness, his mind racing, the unanswered questions multiplying with every passing second. Everything was about to change. And Jack knew it. Jack stood motionless, his heart still pounding in his chest. He couldn't shake the image of Lucy disappearing into that house, a house that now felt more like a fortress, a place that held far too many secrets. The unsettling silence hung in the air, the street around him dark and still. The black SUVs seemed to have melted into the shadows, yet he knew they were still lurking somewhere, watching. He could almost feel their eyes on him. His thoughts were a whirlwind. Why had Lucy looked at him like that? It wasn't just a glance. There was something in her eyes, a mixture of fear, regret, and a silent plea for him to stay away. But Jack couldn't walk away now. Not after everything that had happened. Not after seeing her like that. He had to know what was going on. He had to find out what she was mixed up in. He turned to leave, his mind made up. But before he could take another step, a low, metallic sound broke the silence, like the clink of a lock being undone. His blood ran cold. Slowly, Jack turned back toward the house, his breath catching in his throat. The front door was creaking open again. This time, it wasn't Lucy. The figure that emerged was tall, cloaked in shadow, and moving with purpose. Jack's instincts screamed for him to hide, but it was too late. The figure had already seen him. A voice, deep and controlled, broke the silence. "I've been expecting you, Mr. Thompson." Jack froze, his entire body tensing. There was something unsettlingly familiar about the voice, yet it was completely unrecognizable. He knew in that moment that whatever was happening, whatever he had stumbled into, was far more dangerous than he could have imagined. The figure stepped into the light, revealing a man in a dark suit, but not the man from the SUV. This one was older, his face weathered with age, but his eyes were sharp and calculating. He wasn't here by accident, he knew exactly who Jack was. "I'm not here to hurt you," the man continued, his voice smooth but carrying a hint of menace. "I'm here to make sure you don't interfere. You've already seen too much. Lucy's situation is more complicated than you can understand, and you need to stay out of it." Jack took a step back, his heart hammering in his chest. He opened his mouth to speak, but the man cut him off, his tone sharpening. "Don't say it," he warned, his eyes flashing with a cold intensity. "Don't ask about her. Don't ask about what's really going on. You're not in a position to make demands." The man took another step forward, and Jack instinctively took a step back. He was caught in a trap, there was no way out. The tension between them grew thick, palpable, as if the air itself had turned to steel. Jack's thoughts raced as he struggled to find a way out of this situation. "I can't just walk away," Jack finally managed to say, his voice shaking with a mix of fear and defiance. "If Lucy's in danger, I need to know. I need to help her." The man smiled, but it wasn't a reassuring smile, it was the smile of someone who had seen too much, someone who had lived in the shadows long enough to understand how things worked. "You don't get it, do you? You've already helped her. And that's why you're in danger now." The words hit Jack like a punch to the gut. What did he mean? What did he mean that Jack had already helped her? Before he could process the implications of the man's words, there was a loud screeching sound from the street, a car door slamming. Jack's head snapped toward the noise, and his breath caught in his throat. Another black SUV was pulling up, its headlights blinding in the dark. It stopped right in front of the house, and for a moment, everything seemed to freeze. The figure in the suit was still standing in front of Jack, his posture unshaken, but the arrival of the SUV changed everything. Jack felt a surge of panic. Had they come for him? Were they going to take him too? But as the car doors opened, Jack saw something that made his stomach drop. Lucy was being forced out of the SUV by two men in black suits. Her hands were bound, and she was struggling against their grip, her face twisted in fear. "Lucy!" Jack shouted, his heart leaping into his throat. The man in the suit beside him didn't flinch, but his voice was steady. "I told you to stay out of this. You should have listened." Jack didn't care. He was already running toward Lucy, his legs pumping hard, adrenaline coursing through his veins. He had to get to her. He had to help her. As he neared, one of the men holding Lucy glanced up and caught sight of Jack. Without a second thought, he released Lucy, sending her stumbling toward the ground, and lunged toward Jack. The force of the impact sent them both crashing to the ground, but Jack scrambled to his feet, barely managing to throw the man off of him. But before Jack could reach Lucy, another man stepped in front of him, blocking his path. He was taller than the others, his face expressionless, like a statue, as if he had been trained for this exact moment. "Move!" Jack shouted, but the man didn't budge. Jack's pulse raced as he realized how much trouble he was really in. They weren't just after Lucy, they were after him now. The situation had gone from dangerous to lethal in a matter of moments, and there was no way to predict how far they were willing to go to silence him. Jack's eyes darted around, desperately searching for any chance of escape. His mind was racing, he needed to think fast, but everything felt like it was moving too quickly. The men were closing in, and he was completely outnumbered. He looked back at Lucy, who was still struggling on the ground, her face pale and terrified. And that's when the second twist hit him like a ton of bricks. A voice called from the back of the SUV, clear and sharp, freezing everyone in their tracks. "Enough." The words were simple, but they carried an authority that couldn't be ignored. The man who had spoken stepped out from the shadows, revealing himself to be someone Jack had never expected to see. It was the man from the phone, the one who had warned him earlier, the one who had been behind the cryptic messages. His eyes met Jack's with an intensity that sent a chill through him. "It's time to finish this," the man said. And just like that, everything changed again. The sudden voice silenced everyone. Jack's heart pounded as the man from the SUV emerged from the shadows. His presence was commanding, and it was clear this wasn't someone Jack had been prepared to meet. The stranger's face was set, his demeanor calm as though he had orchestrated every moment of this tense situation. Lucy, who had been struggling on the ground, stopped, her eyes flickering with recognition. The man who had just stepped forward was no stranger to her. There was a strange mix of relief and fear in her eyes as she gazed up at him. The two men who had been holding her down straightened up immediately, retreating a few steps, like soldiers responding to a higher command. Jack's mind raced. This was all spiraling out of control. He had been dragged into something far deeper than he had ever expected. This wasn't just about helping a woman change a tire. This was about power, manipulation, and a dangerous game being played out in the shadows. The man looked at Jack, his cold eyes calculating every movement. "I think it's time you understand the full picture," he said, his voice low but unyielding. "You've been asking questions you don't want the answers to." Jack's pulse quickened as the realization began to sink in. What did this man mean? What was it that Jack didn't know yet? What was Lucy really mixed up in? The man glanced over at Lucy, who was still on her knees, her hands shaking. "I'm sure Lucy has told you some things, but not everything. She's been trying to protect you, keep you out of this mess. But the fact is, Jack, you're already in it. Whether you like it or not." Jack could feel the weight of the words settle over him like a heavy blanket, suffocating his every thought. He tried to make sense of everything, the cryptic messages, the black SUVs, Lucy's strange behavior. He had no idea what kind of world he had stepped into, but one thing was clear, Lucy had been hiding the truth from him, and now it was too late to walk away. Lucy's voice broke the tense silence, quiet but fierce. "You don't understand, Jack. I never wanted you involved. I never wanted you to get hurt. This was never supposed to be your fight." The man glanced at her with a cold smirk. "And yet, here we are." Jack could feel his throat tighten. Every part of him screamed to run, to escape this nightmare. But there was nowhere to go. The man's eyes were now fixed on him, unwavering, and Jack had the unsettling sense that he knew exactly what was going through his mind. "What is this? What's going on?" Jack demanded, the words tumbling out of his mouth in a rush of desperation. "Who are you people? And why are you dragging Lucy into this?" The man didn't answer right away. Instead, he took a slow, deliberate step forward, his gaze never leaving Jack's. Finally, he spoke, his voice heavy with meaning. "We're not just anyone," he said. "We're part of something much bigger than you realize. Something that involves power, influence, and a network that stretches across the globe. Lucy here, she's not just a random woman. She's been a part of this world for longer than you can imagine. She didn't just get involved by chance, Jack. She's been chosen. And you, by helping her, have unknowingly become part of it too." Jack's mind was reeling. Chosen? What did that even mean? The more the man spoke, the less Jack understood. But one thing was clear, whatever had brought them all together, it wasn't random. It wasn't just a chance encounter over a flat tire. There was a purpose behind it, a purpose that Jack had stumbled into by nothing more than a simple act of kindness. "And now," the man continued, his eyes narrowing slightly, "you're at a crossroads. You can walk away, forget everything you've seen, and go back to your ordinary life. Or, you can choose to stay. But know this, once you're in, there's no going back." The weight of his words hung in the air like an invisible chain, pulling Jack into the gravity of the situation. He felt as though he was standing on the edge of a precipice, looking down into a darkness he could never return from. There was no clear answer, no easy choice. The world he had known, the simple life he had led, was slipping away, and all that was left was this dangerous, shadowy world he didn't understand. Jack turned to Lucy, searching her face for some kind of answer, some sign that she could explain this, that she could make sense of what was happening. But her eyes were filled with sorrow, regret. It was as though she had already given up on him ever understanding. "I didn't want this for you," she whispered, her voice cracking. "I didn't want you to see this side of me. But it's too late, Jack. You're already part of it. You can't turn back." Her words hit Jack harder than any of the threats that had come his way. He looked back at the man, who stood calmly, as though he was merely watching the show unfold. Jack could feel the pressure building in his chest, the weight of the decision pressing down on him. And then, just as the silence became unbearable, something unexpected happened. A sound broke the tension, footsteps, heavy and deliberate, coming from the darkness behind the SUV. Another figure stepped into the light, and this time, it was someone Jack recognized. A familiar face. It was the man who had helped him on the phone, the one who had been sending him cryptic messages. Jack's jaw dropped as the man stepped forward, his eyes meeting Jack's with an expression that was almost apologetic. "I'm sorry, Jack," the man said softly. "I didn't want it to come to this. But I never had a choice. None of us did." The man's words left Jack speechless. He looked back and forth between Lucy and the strangers, all of them caught in a tangled web of deceit and danger. Then, the final twist came. The man in the dark suit smiled and raised his hand, signaling to the others. "It's time. Let's show him everything." In an instant, the lights on the SUV flickered, and a large screen in the back of the vehicle came to life. On it, images began to appear, images of Jack himself, his movements, his conversations, his life. Every detail, every moment he had thought was private, was now laid bare in front of him. "I think you should see what we've been watching," the man said coldly. Jack's heart skipped a beat. He had walked right into the trap. And now, he could see the full scope of the game being played. The images on the screen were shocking, each frame more unsettling than the last. Jack's life, his every move, had been meticulously monitored. The sense of violation was overwhelming. He saw his conversations, his interactions with Lucy, even his moments of quiet solitude, all captured by unseen eyes. It wasn't just an invasion, it was a surveillance operation on a scale he could never have imagined. His stomach churned as the reality set in. These people had been watching him for far longer than he had realized. His simple act of kindness, helping a stranger with a flat tire, had triggered a sequence of events he never saw coming. He turned to Lucy, his mind racing with questions. "What is this? Why? Why was I involved in this?" Lucy's face was ashen, her eyes filled with sorrow. She wanted to say something, but the words caught in her throat. She had been a part of this world, this hidden world of power and manipulation, long before Jack had even met her. She had always known, but she had never wanted him to know. She had wanted to protect him, but now it was too late. There was no going back. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I never wanted to drag you into this. But you're in now, Jack. There's no escaping it." The man who had been orchestrating everything, the one who had stepped forward from the shadows, watched them both with cold, calculating eyes. He stepped closer to Jack, his gaze never faltering. "You see, Jack," he said slowly, as if explaining something elementary, "it's not about the tire. It's not about the woman you helped. It's about the bigger picture. The world you think you know is only a fraction of the reality. And now that you've seen a part of it, there's no turning back. You've been marked." The weight of his words pressed down on Jack's chest. He had no idea what this man was talking about, but he knew one thing: he couldn't just walk away. There was no escaping this world now, no matter how hard he tried. His curiosity, his willingness to help someone in need, had bound him to something much darker and much more dangerous than he could ever have imagined. The man's words hung in the air, heavy with implications. Jack wanted to fight back, to demand answers, but he didn't even know where to begin. How could he possibly understand this new world he had found himself in, a world that seemed to stretch beyond the ordinary, into something much more complex, and much more sinister? And then, as if in answer to his unspoken thoughts, the man's expression shifted, a slight smile playing on his lips. "You're not just a pawn in this game, Jack. You're something much more valuable. We've been watching you because we know what you're capable of. We've seen the potential in you. This isn't just about manipulation, it's about shaping the future. You could be an asset to us, or you could be a liability." Jack's heart pounded in his chest. He didn't know whether to feel angry or terrified. His whole life had just been flipped upside down, and the more the man spoke, the less he understood. "You've been chosen," the man continued. "You've been on our radar for a while now. Your actions, your choices, they're part of something much bigger. And whether you want to or not, you're in this now." Jack felt the floor beneath him seem to drop away. He was trapped, caught in a web spun by people who had been watching him for far too long. But what did they want from him? What was the true reason they had targeted him? Was it just his act of kindness, or was there something more to his life that had attracted their attention? Lucy's voice cut through his thoughts. "Please, Jack, don't make this harder than it has to be. You've been given a choice. You can help us, or you can turn your back on everything and risk everything. But if you walk away now, you'll be leaving behind the only chance to protect what matters most." Jack's eyes flickered to her, a mix of confusion and disbelief in his gaze. What was she talking about? Who was she really? And what had he just stepped into? The man who had been speaking to Jack stepped forward, his voice growing more urgent. "The decision is yours, Jack. But make no mistake, if you choose to fight us, if you choose to go against us, you'll be up against a force far more powerful than you can imagine. We have connections, we have resources, and we have leverage. But if you choose to join us, you'll have a chance to shape the future, to be a part of something that could change the world." Jack's mind raced. The offer was too much to comprehend. He was being asked to choose between two impossible options. But then, something inside him shifted. He thought back to the woman he had helped, to the way she had begged him to stay out of this mess. He thought of the strange sense of duty she had instilled in him, the feeling that he wasn't just some random person caught in a strange situation. No, there was something deeper at play here, and he needed to understand it. "I don't want any part of your game," Jack said finally, his voice steady despite the turmoil inside him. "I'm not going to let you manipulate me. I'm not going to play by your rules." For a moment, there was silence. The man's face tightened, his eyes narrowing. The tension in the air was palpable, and Jack could feel his heart racing in his chest. He had made his decision, but at what cost? The man's smile faded. "I was hoping you would see things our way," he said coldly. "But if you want to walk away, then so be it. You won't be the first to think they can escape us. But trust me, Jack, you're not going anywhere." Before Jack could react, the man nodded to his associates, who immediately moved toward him, their steps quick and decisive. The situation had escalated beyond anything he could have imagined. He had wanted to help a woman change her tire, but now his entire life hung in the balance. Just as things seemed about to take a darker turn, a new voice rang out, sharp and commanding. "Enough." The figure that stepped forward was unexpected, Lucy's father. Jack had heard her mention him once or twice, but he hadn't known who he really was. The moment he saw the authoritative presence in the man's posture, he knew. Lucy's father wasn't just another player in this twisted game, he was the key to everything. With a single glance, he commanded the room. "Let him go," he said, his voice carrying an unmistakable power. "He's not the one you want." The tension broke, but Jack knew this was only the beginning. The next steps in this game would be just as dangerous, but at least for now, he had one thing he could hold on to: hope.